Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, back with another photo of the week here on FroKnowsPhoto.com. This was taken on August 7th, 2010 at a wedding that Greg and I was shooting in Florida. I just liked this image. It was what I was going for at the time, but before I get into the full-on details, let's tell you how it was taken. Nikon D3S, Nikon 105 macro VR 2.8, ISO 2500, 1/800th of a second at f4. Of course, it was at 105 millimeters on a full-frame camera. So what you can see here is that it's more of a photojournalistic approach as a second shooter on a wedding. So when I am shooting a wedding, I tend to be the person that captures the behind-the-scenes photos, and Greg captures the setups. So Greg was setting up a photo that we like to do in front of a window. We find a window that looks really nice, nice diffused light, and he usually puts on an 85-1.4 and likes to capture an awesome portrait. But while he's doing that, that frees up a really great look for me to try and capture from the side. Now let me sum up where we were shooting. We were in a hotel. Now the hotel was built in 1928. We were in what I would consider one of the bigger rooms, and that's not that big. We were between the bed and the window, which was about 6 feet or so. Greg was squeezed in there in front of the window, and I was down at a lower angle, hugging the wall so that I could get my framing right. Shot raw, not cropped. As you can see, I kept the nose in, I kept her eyes in. What I was more going for here was a shot of the ear. Her eye is in focus, her ear is nice and focused, but I was going for the earrings. A shot like this can be used many different ways for a wedding. It's composed like this because I can use it on a full page in an album. I can lay out images on the right hand side, down the side. I can pop an image in the top right hand corner. I can put this on the right hand page and have her looking at her husband when we have a shot of just him. So there's a lot of things you can do with the eyes. So in this case, I used the rule of thirds to throw her off to the left hand side. Sometimes you have the eyes leading in, other times you have the eyes leading out. In this case, it's kind of like, what is she looking at? Is she looking at her future husband? What's going on here? So this worked much better in black and white. How did I decide to shoot at 2500? Well, simple enough. I wanted a fast enough shutter speed so that I could capture any movement that may occur. I went to f4 because I needed a little more depth. I didn't want it to be so shallow that it was just thrown off and didn't work. So I've been shooting between 2.8 and 4, depending on the lens. If I'm using a 50-1.4 or an 85-1.4, I tend to shoot that at f2, 2.2, or 2.5, depending on the scene. So here with the macro 105, I went with f4 because I wanted a little bit more push. I can get away with that 2500 ISO because of the D3S. If I was using a D3000 or a beginner camera, I would have probably topped out at 800 ISO, which would have still given us at 2.8, probably 1/25th, probably around 200th of a second without a problem, and you could always utilize the VR in that 105 macro. But this gives you a feel of what I'm looking at a wedding. Gives you a feel of composition and why it's important to have two photographers out there, because one frees you up as the second guy to capture, images like this. So this is just what I think is a really smooth, sensual black and white of a bride on her wedding day. How did I process this? I used Lightroom 3. I pulled back on the clarity to give it a more soft look while still maintaining its sharpness. So you pull back on clarity, which is your mid-tone highlights or your mid-tone contrast, and I pulled back on that so that it would give it a nice glow and a nice soft effect while still maintaining its sharpness. So I hope that gives you a little look inside of this image for this week, for the photo of the week. As always, if you have any questions, you can call me on my Skype line or leave questions down below in the comments. Hope you enjoyed it. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com.